The story opens with our young female protagonist Liliana on a sea voyage. A striking red-haired woman approaches her and asks how old she is, to which the girl replies 6. It was truly unexpected to encounter a novel's female lead during a ship party, the story that suddenly flashed in Liliana's mind along with a high fever a month ago is as follows. The novel's female lead Rebecca leaves her hometown Trena to seek revenge and settle in the Empire. It is where she unintentionally becomes entangled with the male Lu and receives their unconditional love. The male leads use their power to try and claim Rebecca, but Rebecca uses them to start a war and turns her hometown Trancha into a sea of flames. In the process, Liliana's family becomes the victim. Her older sister Alice dies in the battle. Trena is defeated in the war. As for Liliana, she is captured and brought to the Empire as a prisoner. Besides, since the original story ends when Liliana turns 15, she has not matured mentally beyond that age. On top of that, she still cannot recall anything from her past life. For an ordinary 6-year-old to suddenly have all the details of the original story flood into her mind as if struck by lightning. Liliana knows she needs to do something to prevent the original story. However, she does not even know if she regressed or was possessed. Her thoughts get disrupted as Rebecca hands her chocolate. Liliana's face beams as she knows it is hard to get chocolate in Trancha. She cheers, making Rebecca smile. Rebecca then asks Liliana's elder sister Alice for permission to pat her head. Once Alice asks Liliana, to which she nods in excitement. Rebecca mutters that she has a lot of things to apologize for and asks Liliana about her dream. Liliana says she wants to live happily with her sisters. Rebecca says it is a nice dream that will come true. That dawn, someone fell over the side of the ship. After a month of searching, they concluded that the person had died without ever finding the body. That person was Rebecca. Liliana was astounded that the original story had ended before it even started. Her sisters, who had to cooperate with the investigation, were quite shocked, but Liliana doubted they were as stunned as she was. She could not believe this was even possible. If Rebecca really died, then what is the original story that Liliana remembers? The scene shifts to Liliana having a meal with Alice. Liliana has 3 older sisters and 1 older brother. The woman who looks tired and upset is Liliana's youngest sister Amelia. Despite looking like that she was the one who infiltrated the Imperial Palace, she did everything she could to rescue Liliana when war broke out and she was dragged to the Empire. The other one is Regina, who was born 7 minutes earlier than her twin sister. She is kind and makes the best food in the world. Lastly, Liliana's favorite is her oldest sister Alice. For Liliana, she is the coolest person in the world. As for her brother Andrea, he suddenly left for the countryside without a word, thus he is not living with them currently. Liliana misses him dearly. Currently, she is the only one who knows the plot of the original story, so there are a lot of worries. She cannot tell her sisters the death of Rebecca, the original female lead, before the story could even start was chaos itself. Liliana knows the war happened because the 3 male leads are obsessed with her. She wonders if it means she no longer must worry about the war. Liliana told Rebecca her only wish is, well, she wanted to eat delicious food with her lovely family for the rest of her life without anyone dying. The female lead, who is supposed to disrupt this happiness, is already gone, so now only the crazy male leads are left. Lil guesses she will not ever meet them if she continues living like this. Besides, the original story does not even begin until she is 12. 6 years from now, she pushes her worries aside and enjoys her meal. She thinks there is still a long time before the original story begins, or that is what she thought. Soon, Amelia takes Liliana to shop for more clothes. Liliana initially thinks it is a plot to get her injected at the hospital. However, they meet a man at a cafe who politely greets them. However, Amelia remains alert and questions if he is Frenoy's castle. Liliana's eyes widen in utmost shock. Frenoy's castle is a genius mage and the master of the magic tower. He is one of the male leads who plays the madman position in the original story. He imprisoned the female lead in the tower. Frenoy's confirms his identity, while all Liliana could wonder was why this man is there. The color instantly drains from her face. She is aware there are still 6 years left before the original plot begins. First, she decides to get out of there with her sister. She does not know how these two know each other, but Frenoy's is truly a dangerous person. She knows for a fact that all the male leads in the original story had a crazy side. With an obsessive madness, they would do anything for the heroine. The Emperor Marius is the strongest and a hopeless Romantic who would give everything for the heroine there is also the captain of the Knight's Order Leopold, unlike the other two who showed romantic insanity. Furnois, the master of the Mage's Tower, was suffering from true madness. On top of that, his madness was like a ticking time bomb ready to explode at any moment. This made the encounter feel even more dangerous. Amelia questions Furnois if he received the letter on the thesis about the connection between ancient magic and special abilities along with supporting materials. Amelia scoffs that those things are not easily acquired. Francis smiles and says he knows that. He says it is astounding that relics of ancient magic still exist, but if they are also connected to special abilities for a mage, it is like striking gold. Hearing them, Liliana wonders if Francois came here because he's curious about special abilities. Two special abilities are unique powers that only appear in the inhabitants of Trena. The mages of the continent desperately tried to study them, but since Trena maintained a strict isolationist policy, not only was it difficult to study them, but even witnessing them firsthand was nearly impossible. That is why mages coveted even a single thesis related to special abilities. As she thinks about it, Liliana wonders how he even managed to enter Trancha, as the central guard is supposed to be impenetrable. Amelia pats Liliana's head and asks Francois what he thinks Liliana's age is. The man guesses 4 or 5. Amelia reveals how she is her younger sister who was born prematurely, so her body is very weak. If she gets scared even a little, she develops a fever. Furnois questions if she wants him to use healing magic on her now. Liliana turns pale. Amelia says she read his thesis and said a potion with a structure like divine magic boosts healing effects 5-fold even without specific pain for a growing child. It could speed up self-growth for healthier development. Furnois says she explained well, even though she is not a mage. Amelia asserts that she is not completely ignorant on the subject to be underestimated. Liliana deduces that the main reason her older sister is meeting with Furnois as nothing else but because she is sick. If that is the case, she knows she must stop it immediately. She tugs at her sister's sleeve, saying she feels suffocated. However, Amelia only asks the waiter for an orange juice for her. Liliana wonders what to do. She knows she has nothing good to gain by getting involved with Furnois. In the end, she ends up spilling orange juice all over her. Just grabs Amelia's attention, and she quickly caters to Liliana, but to her surprise, Furnois was only staring at her and smiling. She wonders why he is looking at her with that expression back home. Liliana asks Amelia if she is ever going to see that man again. She confesses that she does not like him. Amelia playfully questions if she was not staring at him because he wasn't so handsome. Liliana reluctantly agrees that he is handsome, but reaffirms that she still does not like him. Amelia sighs and says it is for the better that they keep seeing him. She pokes Liliana's nose, asking if she knows how much it will cost her to call him. Liliana is unable to tell her sister how that man is a scary person, even more terrifying than she could imagine now that the protagonist is gone. If anything were to happen to Amelia, Liliana thinks she would hate herself too much. The scene shifts to Liliana's sisters taking her to a playground. Liliana shrieks and excitement, saying she loves it. She wonders how long it has been since she went to a playground after the Rebecca incident. Liliana was suffering from a fever for a while. She could not bear the fear and her body started to ache. It was to the point where she could not go out and had to leave kindergarten. Being trapped at home made Liliana feel so overwhelmed and depressed. She whined to see her friends and made a fuss about playing in the park. It was her youngest sister Amelia who finally caved in and let her go, finally, after wishing for it so desperately. Lilia arrived at the park she had longed to visit for the first time in what felt like forever. Her worry seemed to melt away like snow under the warm sun at home. Boredom and gloom often weighed heavily on her, and the constant fear that her sisters might cross paths with the original protagonists never left her mind. But here, surrounded by the sounds of carefree laughter and the scent of fresh air, her anxieties faded. Excitedly, she made her way to the swings, her favorite. Gripping the chains tightly, she began to pump her legs, propelling herself higher and higher. Her spirit soared with every swing, her laughter ringing out in pure delight. At that moment, she wished for someone to push her, and then, as if by magic, she felt a gentle push from behind. Shocked, she twisted her head slightly. Her curiosity piqued. A man's voice asked, deep and smooth, questioning her if she wanted to go higher. Liliana nodded eagerly, her excitement evident. Please, the man chuckled, a rich, amused sound he gave the swing another push, sending her soaring higher into the sky. For a moment Liliana felt like she was flying the world below, shrinking as her heart filled with uncontainable joy, but joy is a way of turning into fear in the blink of an eye. In her enthusiasm, she leaned too far forward, her small hands slick with sweat lost their grip on the chains. The world slowed down. Liliana felt herself falling, her tiny body weightless as gravity pulled her toward the unforgiving ground. A scream tore from Regina's lips. Regina bolted toward her sister, her feet pounding against the ground as panic gripped her. For Liliana, the moment felt surreal. Everything seemed to move in slow motion, the sky above her a blur. Is this how it ends? She wondered. A pang of fear tightened her chest. She shut her eyes tightly, bracing for the inevitable impact, but instead of the harsh collision she anticipated, she felt strong arms envelop her, catching her mid-fall. The impact wasn't painful, it was firm and reassuring. Liliana opened her eyes dazed, and in a trance she stared up into the face of her savior. His expression was calm, but his golden eyes were filled with concern. Are you hurt? Regina's voice was trembling as she reached them, tears streaming down her cheeks. She fell to her knees, pulling Liliana into a tight embrace. Tell me if anything hurts. Still stunned, Liliana shook her head. I'm fine, she whispered. Regina let out a shaky breath, hugging her even tighter. Marius, who had been the one pushing the swing, rushed forward, his usual composure replaced by sheer panic. His smile was gone, his brows furrowed. Before Liliana could respond, Leopold assures him that the child is fine. Hearing the exchange, Liliana blinked rapidly, her mind struggled to process the situation. Why are the other two male leads here? As her gaze darted between Marius and Leopold, confusion swirled within her. How had they both ended up at the park, and why did it feel like fate had conspired to bring them all together? Regina, however, had no time for such thoughts. She turned to Marius, her expression uncharacteristically stern. Her usual gentle demeanor, which reminded Liliana of a spring breeze, had been replaced by a stormy intensity. What were you thinking, pushing such a small child so hard? She demanded, her voice sharp with anger. Liliana froze, her breath catching in her throat. Regina was rarely this upset. She was always calm, kind, and composed, but now she was truly furious. Her fear wasn't for herself, though it was for Marius. She knew him well enough to understand that while he often wore a charming smile, he could be terrifying when he felt wronged. His wrath was something few dared to face. Would he get angry at Regina? Would her sister's words provoke the Emperor? Liliana's tiny fists clenched as tension filled the air. Regina then turns to Leo and says that if it were not for him, her little sister would have ended up with her head cracked open. Liliana really hoped her sister would stop, as she was getting intimidated by the guy. However, to her shock, Marius swiftly begins to bow and apologize profusely. Lilian was scared, but she was stunned for a different reason now. In the original story, Marius had an outgoing personality, but Liliana never expected him to apologize so politely to a Travan, a person. Liliana assures her sister that she is fine and tells her not to be mad anymore. Regina looks at her little sister in awe. She understood that she was trying to reassure her. Regina laughs and says she will not be mad anymore. Regina thanks Leo for taking care of her sister. Leo blushes and says it is nothing. He says he just did what he had to do. Liliana looks at him shyly. She finds Leopold extremely big. In the original story, he appeared as a sword master who trained his body to the extreme. Later, he became the commander who led Trenna and the Empire to victory in the war. Liliana does not find him scary. If it were not for him, she might have been dead by now. She bows and thanks to Leo. Marius is struck and compliments Liliana is cute. Regina appreciates Leo too and says she wants to repay him. Leo remains flushed and dismisses it as nothing. Marius interjects and asks if Regina would mind being our travel guide. Liliana turned surprised and did not expect this. She thought they would just part ways here. Marius continues explaining how hard it is to travel to Trenna. Liliana hopes her sister will not fall for this trick, but to no avail. Regina smiles and says he will not be making such requests if he has any conscience. Liliana internally cheers for her sister. Marius pushes Leo forward and says it is he who wants to guide more than anything. Leo ends up agreeing, surprising Liliana even more. She wonders what to do. There is nothing good about getting involved with these tragic male leads, but they've already met them. The fact that Marius came means the meeting with Liliana's elder sister is already scheduled. It is because her sister Alice is part of the guard and will lead the escort. After pondering for a moment, Liliana agrees to be the guide since it has come to this. Liliana thinks she might as well change her plan now. She plots to have the male leads and her family become friends, and so Liliana changed her strategy. Along with her sister, Liliana became the two male leads tour guide during the day. Regina's anger subsides eventually, but she does not listen to Marius at all. Fortunately, Marius was not bothered by that. Liliana could not believe he was so cheerful despite being ignored by Regina. Surely it is different from the usual. For Noise, who is like a ticking bomb, Liliana feels a bit relieved since it seems like they have become good friends. Liliana wonders if she can be less scared. The scene shifts to the four settling in a cafe. Marius continues playfully teasing Liliana for her age. Fifth, Liliana asks his age. Marius smiles and asks how old he looks to her. Liliana turns flustered and wonders what is wrong with him. Leopold and Frenoise are indeed handsome, but Marius is just as handsome as a sculpture. Week of handsome guys. Liliana turns quiet. She then points out how he looks 50 years old. Marius tells her to look carefully at his face and tells her to speak comfortably with him. With that, Liliana says he looks 5,550. Maria sighs and says uncle is handsome even in his 50s. However, Liliana barks that Uncle Leo is more handsome and Marius is nothing compared to him. Marius argues that it is not possible, but Liliana continues protesting that Uncle Leo is the best. Contempt. Leo smiles at Marius and tells him to calm down. Regina smiles as she watches the scene unfold. She praises Lilian for having good eyes and agrees with her statement. Leo flushed even more and thanked Liliana. Soon the food arrives, and Liliana cheerfully digs in. It was her favorite childhood meal. She had a tough time dealing with two male leads, so she decided to quickly eat and fill up her energy. However, she hears Leo calling out Francois's name. She pauses and looks sideways, wondering why he brought out that name here. A familiar voice answers that he came earlier than scheduled because he has work to do. He then questions Leo and Marius why the two are already in trance seeing them all together. Liliana ponders whether she is a magnet that attracts male leads. After all, she thinks she should not have asked her sisters to go out and play in the morning because she was bored. Marius explains that they came a few days earlier to go sightseeing. While they were here, he explains that Regina and the girl are showing them around, but he points towards Liliana and asks why she is so pale. This makes Fran's attention shift towards Liliana and he smiles at her. He remarks that they meet again, making Liliana's face turn pale. She was scared to death of Frenoise castle. Not only did he imprison the female lead, but he also kept her in the tower. Liliana was brought in as the Empire's prisoner, forced into being the maid of the female lead and imprisoned in the tower. Even worse, when the female lead did not eat properly, Frenoise fed Liliana a poison that would cause her to die painfully if she did not take the antidote regularly. Only when the female lead eats properly does he give Liliana enough antidotes to let her last only half a day. In order to save her, Rebecca forced herself to swallow food, even though she vomited. Regina notices how her sister greets the man in fear. Regina smiles at the man and greets him, asking if he knows her youngest sister. Frenoise questions if she is her big sister and asks if she is also Amelia's sibling. Regina continues smiling and explains that Amelia is her twin little sister. Her demeanor turns cold and she asks how he knows her. Liliana Frenoise reveals how her youngest sister made a contract with her because of her poor health. This confuses Regina. Frenoise playfully says that he should not talk about the contract carelessly like Amelia suggested. Regina mumbles that she will ask her sister about it. Liliana quietly eats her food, certain she will have an upset stomach. Liliana did not know what kind of contract I made with Frenoise, but she was so sure that it was because of her. She hopes she does not get in trouble. Frenoise suggests Regina go home and listen to Amelia properly. He says that the older sisters are supposed to be the guardians, but she must be scolded for deciding all on her own. Liliana panics while Regina agrees with the man. Liliana is sure she needs to run away right now. Later, when Liliana wakes up from her nap, she sees herself being carried by Leopold. Seeing her awake, Marius asks how did she sleep. Liliana looks around to see where she is earlier after they finished eating. Frenoise had something to do and left. They played at the nearby beach and Liliana guesses that she must have fallen asleep back then. She sees that they are near their home. Regina turns to Leo and says they are almost here. She says they can walk on their own from here. Leo offers to escort her to the front of the house, but Regina says it is fine. She says her sisters might feel uncomfortable as it is a house where they live alone. Leo agrees and apologizes for being inconsiderate. Leo takes Liliana down. Leo then shyly asks Regina if he could ask her to guide him again another day. Hearing this, Marius whistles playfully. Liliana stomps on his foot, telling him not to do that. She grows more irritated as Marius messes up her hair. He continues teasing her and imitating her. Furious, Liliana punches his legs, calling him a goat pig. Marius chuckles in amusement. His constant teasing causes Liliana to end up crying. Regina decides to check up on her sister and excuses herself from Leo, saying they can meet again at the cafe in 3 days at 2 p.m. Marius constantly tries to stop the girl from crying. Regina approaches Liliana and asks who made her cry so much. Liliana hugs her sister, cursing at Marius, calling him a childish fool. She swears to punch him first one day when she has fists of steel. After the two girls leave, Leo turns towards Marius and asks if he really made such a young one cry. Marius says she is so cute that he could not resist. He says it is all okay as Leo managed to make plans with Regina. Because of that, he smiled as he saw Leo's flustered face. It seems like he really fell for her at first sight. The Leopold, trembling nervously after meeting a lady by chance, was extremely amusing to him. He thinks the knights working under him saw this. They would probably lose their minds, asking if they were dreaming. He found it funny as he imagined the scenario at the time when the trip to Tranche for the meeting had been confirmed. They decided to arrive slightly earlier than scheduled to take care of a few personal matters. The government seemed uneasy about the two of them wandering around without any guards, but Leopold, the sword master known as the human weapon, and Marius, who had ascended the throne after a bloody conflict with his siblings, were already at a level where they did not need any protection. Without fear, they embarked on their sightseeing journey in Trena, but who would have known, even with strength, there was no one to guide them on their way, and so they end up getting lost. The emperor saw the atmosphere of the country, wealthy, peaceful, and beautiful. The climate is mild and their abundance speaks for itself. He wonders what conqueror in the world could resist desiring this place. Even just forming diplomatic relations instead of conquering them would undoubtedly bring immense wealth to the empire. He knew it was important to make a good impression here. He got cut off from his thoughts as he heard a child squealing. The voice was coming from a playground. This caught his attention and he made his way to the playground, wondering what was so fun about swinging on a swing. He sees Liliana and is instantly reminded of a man, he mutters, recognizing the girl as the child of Berja. He says he looked into it before coming to Trancha. The Burso family has a youngest daughter born late in life. Leo ponders and remembers how the Burso family was renowned for politics, but he asks why Andrea Burso retreated to the countryside. He finds it incomprehensible that a promising politician at the prime of his career abandoned everything to move to a rural area. Leo snaps back into reality and is surprised to see that Marius has already made his way towards the little girl. The moment Marius saw the child smile so lively, he wondered why he had abandoned his own to die so heartlessly. He internally swore to Andrea that he would fulfill his promise to him to protect his siblings. That is the only atonement he can offer. The scene shifts to Regina confronting Ayla for making decisions by herself related to Liliana. Amelia assures her sister that this is a terrific opportunity. Regina agrees with her, but says that Liliana is not some lab rat who is to be fed so recklessly. They continued arguing while Liliana hid under her bed sheet. She thinks it is her fault. If she had been stronger, her sisters would not have fought. She hugs her plushie Cookie and hopes Alice will come. It is because when Alice comes, her younger sisters will stop fighting. Liliana believes her sister Alice to be the strongest woman in the world. With that assurance, she closes her eyes and drifts off. The next morning, Liliana is woken up by Amelia. Liliana has a hearty breakfast and asks her sister where they are going. Amelia reveals how they will meet the pretty silver-haired guy they met last time. Liliana turns pale and fs sickness to avoid the meeting, and so they meet again. Liliana was given some sort of grape juice, but to her horror it was bubbling. Amelia dragged Liliana here, and she had no choice but to meet the man, but she has her doubts about the strange drink. Amelia urges her to drink it so she will get healthier. Liliana's older sister Amelia is a recognized magician with divine powers in Trancha. She is also a Scholars studying supernatural abilities. Because of that, Liliana often found herself in situations where she had to deal with magic potions, thus she knows exactly what has been mixed into this. Amelia promises to buy her anything she wants if she drinks all the potion. Liliana does not agree, and Amelia force feeds her the potion. She takes one sip to avoid getting scolded, but its gross taste makes her eyes fill with tears, and she is unable to drink it further. Amelia continues urging her to drink, so Liliana has no choice but to obey. She ends up throwing a fit and saying she hates her sister. She turns mad at Amelia, however her face lights up as she sees France while bringing a cake for her. He apologizes and assures her that she will feel better after eating it. Liliana reminds herself that she is angry and that his face and cake will not make her forgive him. Using his magic, Frenoise brings up a squirrel it was made of light, making Liliana's eyes fill with sparkle. She pets the squirrel and Frenoise has her take a bite of the delicious cake. He praises her for being brave and drinking the potion despite its awful taste. Liliana is filled with praise and her mood turns okay at last. Amelia sigh in relief. Francois explains that there might be some side effects as this is her first time consuming his magic. Amelia asks about the period of his stay in Trena. Francois says he will not be staying for long as he came here for work. Amelia reminds him that it is part of the contract that he checks on Liliana once a week while he is here. Francois agrees. He then turns his attention to Liliana and coldly mentions how he wants her to grow up healthy. Liliana and Amelia finally reached home. Liliana sigh in relief. Earlier Francois' expression felt scary to her. She wonders why he made that face if he wants her to be healthy that she could not understand. Upon reaching home, Liliana finds Regina at home. Regina asks her which outfit looks better. Amelia also enters the room and questions whom she is meeting. Regina gets startled and reveals she is meeting a guy. Amelia mentions how she has been on plenty of dates, but has never worried about her clothes. Liliana nods along. Her sister had honey blonde hair, as rare and sweet as trans nectar, unlike the eldest and youngest sisters who are not interested in romance. Regina is quite into it. The men trying to impress her even brought gifts to win her over, but those men never caught her attention. Regina discloses how that guy seems decent and good-looking. Liliana could not believe that her sister was being proactive over some guy and wondered who it was when she asks. Regina blushes and says it is the guy they met last time. Lana is astounded realizing that her sister is meeting Leopold Valtrand. She never imagined this kind of development after the war between the Empire and Tranche erupted. Leopold and Alice stepped forward as commanders of their respective nations after an intense battle. Trena eventually fell. The one who took Alice's life was none other than Leopold. If her second sister and Leopold get along well, maybe her eldest sister will be safe even if a war breaks out. This is an opportunity she supports Regina's choice, making her laugh, but Amelia feels like something is off and asks Liliana why she is so excited. She then notices how Liliana has a fever and suggests giving her medicine. That very night, Liliana ended up being carried to the local clinic on her sister Regina's back. Even though she took the fever medicine, the fever got worse. This makes her feel bad for her sister. If Regina worries about her, she will not be able to go on a date with Leopold. On the other hand, as sullen Leo returns to his dwelling, Marius asks if he got rejected so soon. Leo sighs and says he got stood up. This shocks Marius, and he asks what happened. Though Leo did not know much about women, he was sure she should not have asked him about his relationship status. If she was not interested, he wonders if he might have been mistaken. It might be that she had no interest in him at all, and she was caught off guard by her crying sister back then. The fact that she did not show up even after he waited 3 hours makes him think the signs are clear. Marius mentions how they have only met once, but Leo says it does not matter. What matters is his feelings for her have been ignited. Marius awkwardly agrees. He tells him to get ready as the guide from Travin will be here soon. They decided to move to a hotel because of security concerns. They converse about why Frenoise is already in Travona. They wonder what kind of business he had. Though Marius knew the real reason, he remained quiet about it. Soon there is a knock on the door. Leo opens it to find their guide for today standing outside. Marius immediately shakes hands with her and introduces himself. Alice greets them and says she will be responsible for their security during their stay. She introduces herself as the chief inspector of the Travin Maritime Police Security Bureau. Alice Burso. Marius' eyes widen as he looks at her. He thought her voice would be just as cold as her impression, but surprisingly it is soft. He asks if she is perhaps Regina's sister. Upon asking, he explained they met by chance and she guided them for a day. Leo turns stiff as soon as he hears the name Regina. Marius suggests they talk in the carriage. Marius discreetly stares at Alice. He knows the Burso family is the most prestigious political family in Trancha. They have produced numerous politicians, and when war breaks out they enlist regardless of gender and stand on the front lines. This speaks of how the family has a long history. He thinks sending a direct descendant with the ability to protect the emperor alone signifies Traven's sincerity towards him. Marius asks about Liliana, to which Alice asks if he knows Liliana too. Marius replies affirmatively and says they are quite close. Alice reveals that the youngest one has been running a high fever for several days and is currently hospitalized, and another sibling are by her side taking care of her. Hearing this shocks Leo the most. Marius could tell the man was relieved that he did not get stood up. Upon further questioning, Alice revealed she was fine this morning, but at night the fever rises again, so it is hard to decipher her progress. Alice shifts the topic and asks about their tour. As they talk, Marius reveals he has decided to have a political marriage based solely on political stance, but everyone is so beautiful that it is difficult. Alice turns speechless. She says she did not know that. Marius comments that mixing blood creates a very long-lasting bond. He asks for her opinion and if there is someone she would recommend. Alice asks if he has any specific requirements. Marius hums and says that since he proposed a political marriage without prior notice, it should be someone who thinks along these lines well. He says they should be from a prestigious political family. Alice could tell he had a voice mixed with playfulness and an incredibly light attitude. However, he is certainly a man who has risen to the top by staining his hands with the blood of his brothers. Alice has a strong intuition that if she gets distracted here, she will be devoured by the opponent. Marius diverts her attention as he suggests that she will not be a bad match. Alice realizes that this man's goal has been her from the very beginning. She knows she wants someone from a direct lineage, from a politically prestigious family that will not be caught in the empire. There are only a few individuals in Trena who can implant powerful abilities into the royal bloodline. Alice smiled, saying she supposes it depends on what he can offer her. She hopes she does not think she is that easy of a woman. Last dawn, Liliana heard her sisters fighting every time she opened her eyes faintly. Liliana could see Amelia crying. She reached out because she was so sad, but it seemed like her sister could not see her. She hopes to get better soon so her sisters will not cry anymore. Thinking like that, Liliana ate a lot of hospital food, and so she was able to get discharged safely. And now she is bravely on her way to the playground on her own. She remembers how Regina could not go on a date with Leopold because of her. Since Rebecca, the original female protagonist, is dead, the original story would not have started. Even if the war is a political issue and anything could happen, it seems unlikely that our devastating situation like in the original story will occur. Liliana thinks there is only one question left. If the original story disappears, who will the male lead end up meeting and marrying? Maris started a war in the original to win the heroine's favor. Then, if the woman he falls in love with this time desires peace, there may not be a war. She hopes Francia meets someone who is truly right for him more than anyone else. As for the innocent and pure-hearted man Leopold, she really hopes things go well between him and Regina. He may be gruff, but Liliana knows he is kind-hearted, and right now he is experiencing a teenage boy's kind of love. She wonders how to make him go on a date with her sister. She sighed, thinking how wonderful it would be if they happened to run into each other somewhere at the playground. Leo and Marius meet Liliana. They instantly fuss over her and ask how she is feeling. This sudden encounter surprises Liliana. On the other hand, Amelia fusses over Liliana, who has still not returned home. Alice suggests that she go. She tells Amelia to take a break today. Amelia smiles and says she will go to the library to look up some papers. Then Alice turns her attention to Regina and asks if something is wrong. Flustered, Regina confesses that she liked him more than she thought she did. This confuses Alice. Regina reveals she met someone by chance. Personality-wise, Leo was not her type. She always preferred someone who could keep a conversation going rather than someone who was reserved, and when it comes to looks, she preferred delicate and refined looks like Fernoy's castle. But then the soft voice that spoke as he walked closer, and the way he blushed like a boy at everything she said, Regina could not forget at his request to meet. Again was nothing extraordinary, but it was a simple and sincere request. It might be that his sincerity touched her heart. She smiles and says if they were truly meant to be, another chance will come someday. She suggests Alice bring back some grilled chicken legs. As Alice opens the door, she finds Liliana by the door. Liliana instantly hugs her big sister. Regina sees who has escorted Liliana back. It was Leo. She blushes as she sees him, however she turns embarrassed as she realizes she is in her pajamas and has messy hair. She instantly runs away. Liliana reveals how the two uncles are her friends and are hungry, therefore she brought them here. Marius enters the house. He remarks that Miss Alice is still as beautiful as ever. Alice groans internally. The scene shifts to the family going to a restaurant. Liliana sits Regina and Leo together, causing the two to turn flustered. Liliana then discloses to Leo that her sister likes lilac. The entire way here, she deliberately holds both the sister and Leo's hands. After observing Regina's reaction thoroughly, she could see it was of green light. If Leopold becomes her brother-in-law, Liliana is certain the risk of war will decrease, plus Alice's chances of survival will increase, and since Leopold is a gentle soul, he will not make my sister cry. She thinks it will be a harmonious family. She daydreams about her sister having a baby and becoming an aunt. Alice smacks her head and tells her not to tease Regina. Marius hears this and playfully suggests Liliana become the CID for her older sister. Meanwhile, Amelia goes to the library and bumps into Frenois. He asks if she is studying on the weekend. Amelia notices the book in his hand and says he seems interested in healing studies. Amelia says there are better books on the subject than the one he is reading. She suggests recommending a few to him. Frenois says he would not say no. Amelia suggests heading to Section C, where they will find more useful research there. Amelia explains healing and purification are not exactly her areas of interest. She hands him books related to the ones he was reading before Amelia leaves, but Francois holds her back. He smiles and asks if she is hungry. He says he would like to thank her and leave a good impression on her by buying her a meal. Amelia says she does not really need a thank you. In all truth, Frenois is not that hungry. He has noticed how well-versed Amelia is to hold a meaningful connection with him. Plus, as a local of Traven, she is well acquainted with the nuances of this place. Keeping her close would be beneficial, and most importantly, he knows she is the younger sibling of Andrea Burso, the man he struck the deal that cannot be undone with. He is aware winning someone over is easy. He thinks a little warmth in her smile is usually all it takes to win people over. He thinks Andrea's younger sibling will not be any different from anyone else, but to his utter confusion, Amelia cringed out. She remarks that smiling is kind of annoying. She says she has been wanting to correct him for a while now and tells him to stop calling her you. She says he should at least get her name right if he wants to have dinner with her. She then affirms that he has no interest in him and that it is not going to work. She tells him to either figure out what he wants to learn and use him for it, or keep wasting effort on education that is never going to work. Amelia had not even a hint of charm, just pure disdain in her eyes. This makes Frenois comprehend that she does not care about him at all. At the restaurant, Frenois asks how she got to know that he has something he wants to learn about her. Amelia says it is obvious. As they talk, Francois realizes that seducing her is not going to work. He smiles at the woman at the back, whose heart instantly pounds heavily for the beautiful man. He knew that it was not that his charm was not good enough, it was that she was the weird one. Seeing him smile, Amelia cringes out and says this makes him feel sick. He concluded there is no need to pretend to be a nice guy anymore. He calls Amelia a sunfish, annoying her even further. Little did he know that years later he would deeply regret calling Amelia that, but that is a story for another time. That was a story of a distant future yet to unfold. On the other hand, Liliana found herself utterly perplexed as Marius casually mentioned that she could play Cupid for them. The suggestion left her blinking in confusion, her mind racing. Was there something between them, something unspoken, something significant that she wasn't aware of? The thought lingered, unsettling her. The atmosphere around the table grew undeniably awkward, tension hanging in the air like a fragile thread about to snap, seemingly oblivious to it, or perhaps deliberately ignoring it. Marius made an extravagant promise. With a confident smile, he declared, "I'll buy you everything here," without waiting for objections. He waved the waiter over and ordered one of everything on the menu. Lil's eyes widened in sheer disbelief. Everything, she gasped, her voice a mixture of excitement and incredulity. The realization dawned on her this included the 12 desserts her sisters never allowed her to indulge in. For a fleeting moment, she felt a childlike thrill bubbling within her. As much as Liliana hated to admit it, Marius had an undeniable charm about him despite her reservations. He always seemed to know how to make her feel like the center of the universe, if only for a little while. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't so bad after all. When the meal was finally served, Liliana couldn't hold back her delight. She eagerly dug into the array of delicacies, her face lighting up with pure joy as each bite melted on her tongue. But the mirth was cut short when Alice, ever the voice of practicality, intervened. She firmly insisted that the full menu order be cancelled. Even so, Liliana didn't mind. The desserts she did get to save her were more than enough to satisfy her sweet tooth. For once, she didn't have to share, and it felt like a small victory. Meanwhile, Leopold and Regina were growing closer with each passing moment. Leopold, ever the gentleman, took the liberty of helping Gina cut her meat into manageable bites, earning a warm smile from her, but his attention soon shifted to Liliana. Without hesitation, he leaned over and began to assist her as well. It was then that something struck him as he placed her plate back in front of her. He couldn't help but notice how meager her portion was compared to Edgar, who was only a year older, but ate twice as much. Liliana's plate seemed almost comically small. He took a closer look at her. She was so petite, her frame almost delicate. The thought weighed heavily on him. Just how fragile was this girl? The moment was broken by Alice, who urged Liliana to eat her vegetables. Before Liliana could protest, Maria stepped in with surprising ease. Without a word, he scooped up her untouched carrots and ate them himself. Liliana's jaw dropped in mock indignation. Later, Liliana excused herself, heading to the restroom with Regina in tow. The table fell quiet in her absence, the air thick with unspoken thoughts. Alice, however, wasn't one to sit idly by. She turned her sharp gaze to Marius, ready to saw and affront him with his antics, but Marius had other plans. He leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. I have a proposition for you, he said, his voice steady and calm. This will be my first and final offer. Regarding Liliana's health, Alice's eyes widened in shock. Of all the things he could bring up, this was the last she expected. How did he know? Few people were aware of how frequently Liliana fell ill. Even fewer understood the real reason behind it. What do you mean? She asked cautiously, her voice barely above a whisper. Marius didn't waver. His gaze met hers, unwavering and resolute. Liliana won't make it past 15, he said, his words landing like a thunderclap. The silence that followed was deafening. With this, the video ends. Why did the original story fall apart when the heroine died? Was her death truly an accident, or was it orchestrated by someone? What role does Liliana play in this altered narrative, and is her presence key to preventing further chaos? What secrets are the Emperor, the Sword Master, and the head of the Magic Tower hiding behind their charming FCS? Stay tuned for more updates.